Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is the January 2021 CCN meeting. I'm Mike Michalczak, the new chair of CCN. I took over this month. I hope everybody had a happy and COVID-free 2021 and New Year's. We're still going to be doing virtual Zoom meetings, I think, for the next, at least through May and June. Hopefully by the fall, we can get back to face-to-face meetings. However, tonight we had 53 people register, so I think the Zoom meetings are have been a very good success for CCN in terms of people hearing the talk. So again, Joanne said, make sure your mics are on mute because we are recording this talk and it'll be on the CCN YouTube channel. So Chemical Consultants Network, for those of you who don't know, is a group of chemists and chemical engineers that support, I should also say life scientists, that support members who are consulting or interested in consulting. So CCN provides expertise and resources to our members. We hold monthly meetings, as you're doing right now, on topics of interest. Paid members can create a web page on CCN's website in order to attract potential clients. And we're having a talk in March about how to get clients. So stay tuned to our website. We'll be posting that information probably within a month. CCN is a topical group of the Philadelphia section of the American Chemical Society. And we are also supported by AICHE. Our speaker tonight is Mark Trebold. Hopefully I pronounced it right, Mark. Director of Business Development and Investment at Ben Franklin Technology Partners. And our former chair, Keith Wing, will do the introduction of Mark. So take it away, Keith.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So we're very pleased to have as our speaker tonight, Mark Trebold, who's the Director of Business Development and Investment at Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Mark leads the investment activity for Ben's physical sciences sector. He's also oftentimes the Ben Franklin's first point of contact for many companies or entrepreneurs that are want to use Ben's resources for things like mentoring, technical assistance, and funding advice. In addition, Mark runs Ben Franklin's FabNet program, which seems to be a proprietary program for rapid prototyping and fabrication utilizing advanced manufacturing technologies. That actually, I'm really curious to hear about that. He also coordinates many of Ben's other new business development and technology commercialization activities. Mark has over 30 years of experience in innovation, engineering, and manufacturing. Previously, he was VP R&D for Certainteed Corporation, North American building materials manufacturer, where he's responsible for R&D, and also new business integration, bringing in numerous products to commercial success, worth over $100 million annually. So in this role, he also oversaw international new product launches, such as global program manager for the Paris-based parent company of Certainteed, Saint-Gobain. So we're very honored to have Mark come and talk with us. I have to say that my connection to Mark was through my friend and colleague, Bob Grutzmacher, who's my former DuPont colleague. And today, Mark will be talking to us about Ben Franklin Technology Partners, giving us an introduction, and then he hopes that most of the time will be spent in Q&A. So with that, please take over, Mark.
All right, Keith, thanks for that introduction, and thank you all for having me this evening. I have to admit that when this idea of speaking to this group first came up, I was a little reluctant. I didn't know how much interest there would be in startup companies or resources for startup companies among this group. But then I have to, I've told many people in my previous role as vice president of R&D for a large corporation, I wish I had known about Ben Franklin when I was in that role, because there are many times where we're looking for new technologies, new materials, launching new types of products where Ben Franklin has, not only do they have a portfolio of companies that might have been able to help us as we developed new products and processes, but if they didn't, you'll find out in a few minutes that Ben Franklin has an extensive network throughout the state and even reaching nationally and sometimes internationally. So it can be a good first stop on your way to developing new products. And really developing new products is what we did most of when I was at Certainteed. And now with Ben Franklin, you would think there would be a big gap between launching products for a large corporation versus all these little startups. The fact is, the problems are all the same. There may be a different scale, but they're all the same problems. And the big corporation has a different scale and different pocketbook, a lot more money to solve problems. Whereas the small startups have to be a little more nimble and creative in their problem solving. So I'm going to share my screen now. I have some slides. It says the host has disabled participant screen sharing. Is there a way for me to share my screen?
I'll fix that. Just give me a minute.
So we have this while we're waiting, we have this canned presentation that we do all over the region to introduce people to Ben Franklin. And I've cut it down a bit. I want to give a high level presentation. If you have questions, we're going to have time for questions at the end. So hopefully we can dive down a little deeper if needed in the Q&A period.
Should be able to share now.
All right, looks good so far. Can everyone see this?
I can see it. This is Mike.
Okay, great. So, all right. So, what's Ben Franklin Technology Partners? So I would say, Ben is best known in the Philadelphia area as a seed investor in startup tech companies. We are an investor. We do invest money, but we have other resources that we need to provide for these startups as well. We do invest in startups, but we also invest in established companies. Somebody who may be looking at some kind of a pivot, maybe automating a process, maybe spinning out a new product or even a new company. And then when we say tech companies, sometimes people are thinking IT and software, but tech is a very broad topic for us, and I'll describe that a little more later. But at the end of it all, we're an economic development group, and our mission is to create jobs and to grow businesses and grow the revenue of the businesses that we work with. We are a nonprofit, which is kind of unheard of in the investment world, but we receive about 30% of our funding from the state of Pennsylvania. And every dollar that we get, passes through us, and we invest that into companies in the region, both, like I said, both in terms of actual funding investments and then also providing resources to these companies. So here are some numbers. Being an economic development group, we have to track everything that we do. And, those are some big numbers: 31,000 jobs, 2,000 companies launched. But really, to me, the important takeaway here, the amazing thing to me, is that all of those numbers come out of this little corner of Pennsylvania. Our office is located down at the Navy Yard. There are 3 other Bens in Pennsylvania. There's one out in Pittsburgh, which is southwest. There's one in Central PA, which is in State College, that's CNP, and then one up at Lehigh, and then us at the Navy Yard. So those numbers that I just showed all come out of our little corner of Pennsylvania. And this is what we did last year. Typically, we're doing 5 to 10 million. Last year, we were a little light. So we did 4.8 million to 25 companies. And you can do the math. Average investment there, it's about $200,000 a company. We can go as low as 50,000 and as high as 500,000. But you can see our sectors that we invest in, and then a couple more numbers here about jobs and dollars leveraged. By the way, dollars leveraged means, so we have invested, so last year we invested $4.8 million in 25 companies. Those 25 companies were able to leverage that 4.8 million and attract another 260 million to the region. So that's what that number means there. And then over here, state return on investment, the state gets $3.90 in tax revenue for every dollar that they provide for us to invest. So that tax revenue is on the basis of jobs created and the revenue growth of the companies that we work with. This is a number that's been developed by an independent party, third party, and we do this like about every 3 to 5 years, and that number's been pretty consistent. So who are we for entrepreneurs? Obviously, entrepreneurs, startups, everybody needs money. We will see 300 to 400 companies in a year, and you see the number we invest in. So 90% of the time we have to say no. But the answer never really is no. The answer is not yet, and here's why. So that's one of the differences. One of our differentiators at Ben Franklin is we don't just turn companies away. We give them some good reasons, some good things to work on, and then the door is always open for them to come back. For investors, I have a map in a minute. I'll show you. We have a portfolio of about 250 companies. When you do this many investments every year, we accumulate quite a portfolio. So investors, of course, are interested in what's in our portfolio. You know, different investors have different interests in terms of types of technology, stages of companies, levels of revenue. So everybody's interested in what we're doing. They look over our shoulders and say, you know, okay, we're interested in this type of company or that type of company. What do you have for us? And that's not just, you know, local investors. That's venture capitalists around the country. And that also includes corporate investment arms. There are several corporations that have been in touch with us to say, you know, how can you help us to augment our R&D? And then finally, partners. Ben Franklin being around for over 35 years, we've developed a lot of partnerships with the other economic development groups around the city and the region, universities, government, you name it. We have an extensive network of partners. That's going to come up again, but that's a big part of what we do is connecting people. So why does Ben work? Well, we say capital, counsel, and connections. Capital, I've covered that. As I said, 5 to 500,000. Everything we do requires at least a 1-to-1 cash match. We are not lead investors. We are never lead investors. We are only matching investors. So when we put 200,000 into a company, we want to see that company has 200,000 from another source, another investor, friends and family. Just want to share the risk. When it comes to counsel, you know, this is the part where we provide guidance, mentoring for these companies that don't always get our investment. So, you know, we can help them review their business plan. We do mentoring. We can help make connections and referrals, which leads me to the next circle here with connections. And as I mentioned, being around for so long, we have all these connections, and a couple I forgot to include are obviously the alumni companies that we have. We have over 2,000 alumni companies in the region, and corporations. So how we invest, these are our eligibility. These are our must-meet criteria for companies. So you have to be a registered for-profit business, which means you have to be able to provide an employee identification number to prove that. You don't necessarily have to be registered here in the Philadelphia region. A lot of companies are registered in Delaware, but there has to be a significant presence here. So that's the next bullet. Company must be located in the 5-county region. That's Philadelphia, Montgomery, Delaware, Chester, and Bucks counties. And what we're looking for is a significant presence. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a headquarters, but there has to be some significant chunk of the business located here in our region. There has to be some substantial technological differentiation, and that sometimes is hard to find, but we look hard at some companies. For example, we've done investments in companies that make baseball bats and companies that make commercial fishing nets, which you would think have no technology in them. But when you look closely at the technology or the manufacturing process, that gives us enough leeway to be able to invest in those companies. Of course, we invest in some very high-tech companies too that are developing technologies around 5G and a lot of medical technology. And then, as I mentioned before, you have to have a match, dollar for dollar, minimum of dollar for dollar. So what are our technology sectors? We have IT, we call it IT. So, it is software, but there's also business model innovation here. I'll call it business model innovation. It's the next Uber of this or Airbnb of that. There's mobile platforms, anything to do with the IT world. We can invest in those kinds of companies. Digital health is kind of a cross between our health and our IT business. Digital health is generally an IT business around big data in big health systems. Health, we'll do diagnostic equipment, medical devices, maybe a little bit of therapeutics. And then finally, physical sciences is everything that's not health or IT. So it's a very diverse category, but generally it's going to be people who are manufacturing things or maybe developing new materials or something to that effect. I talked about our map. You can see here that most of our concentration is here in the city of Philadelphia. About half of our portfolio is there, but significantly, there's the other half is located out in the counties. And, we spend time at different places throughout these counties. As I mentioned, we have this canned presentation that we do. We move all over the region here and present Ben and make sure we provide access to people who are looking for resources from Ben. This is the last 5 years, what we've done, similar to the first slide that I showed about tracking numbers, but this is pretty interesting here in that, we did 218 investments. We invested $47 million. And the number I like to focus on here is the 1.5 billion. So we put 47 million out there on the street into 218 companies, and those companies were able to attract 1.5 billion. So that's 30 times the investment that we put out there. These companies were able to attract to our region. And I find that to be pretty impressive. We have something we call the circle of benefits. What we did was to package all the resources that we have, all the programs, resources, and we put them all in a basket and call it the circle of benefits. I'm going to highlight just a couple of them today. Keith mentioned FabNet. That's in here. I think that is actually the next slide. Oh, no, it isn't. It's the one after this. But first one I wanted to highlight is Mentor Connect. This is a formal mentoring program developed by MIT. They had some people come down and train our mentors. And now you can see since June of 16, the numbers here. We've got over 400 mentoring sessions, 106 mentors, 116 mentees, and that number continues to grow. So we're always looking for mentors, and as we see companies, we bring them into our Mentor Connect program. FabNet, this has been ongoing for about the past 4 years now. This is a program that I run. And the way this works is we kind of call this a virtual accelerator. So we put together this group of service providers over here. And these people, there are machine shops, woodworking shops, but there are also 3D printers, printed circuit board designers, fabricators, robotics companies, functional fabrics, all kinds of capabilities here. This group could pretty much develop anything. But again, you look at the numbers over the last 4 or 5 years. We only put $329,000 out there into 43 different projects, I'll call them. And we took, those projects got interesting enough for us to invest $5.4 million of our own money. And then those companies were able to go on and attract $78 million. So the multiplication effect carries through in many of our programs. Just a couple examples. Some of them maybe you've heard of or read about. We have Augean Robotics, makes a little robot they call the burro that's used in the farming industry that will follow people around, or you can train it to just take a specified path, and it's being used right now. Kind of the first pilot market is in the berry market out in California. Roar for Good is a kind of a personal panic button. You can see the hardware there, but that's also links to a phone that will dial any pre-programmed numbers that you put in there if you feel like you're in danger. And a Levy is a 3D printer for biomaterial. Next one I have is Prima. Prima is actually a carbon copy of FabNet. So these two are the only grant programs that Ben Franklin had. They're small grants compared to our investments. Like I said, the smallest investment we'll do is $50,000, but these are typically around $5,000 grants. And the purpose of these is to help people to get their prototype to the next level. So Prima is specific to our health sector. Health, as you probably know, has some different requirements than somebody just making a widget. So we have some different partners in here who are more focused on developing health products. We also have partnerships with all the universities in the area. Their tech transfer offices are always interested in speaking with us, showing us what they have. We have periodic meetings with all of them to see what's coming down the pike, who's ready for investment, who's not, what's it going to take to get them ready for investment. And likewise, when we have companies who need some technical resources, we can reach back to these universities and help them to find technical resources. Another program I wanted to mention is what we call our first meeting program. There's kind of 2 parts to the first meeting program. One is a way for us to introduce our companies to VCs. So we've got a kind of a portfolio of VCs who have each provided their areas of interest, their types of companies, the level of revenue, the number of employees they want to see. Same with corporate first meeting. So we've met with several of we probably have about 10 or 15 of the companies in our region who have laid out kind of a roadmap for us that if we come across any of these kinds of companies or these kinds of technologies, they agree to take that first meeting with the company. And then it's up to that company from there to make the sale, whatever that means. Another thing, this is a fairly recent, I I don't want to call it a program, but it's an activity that Ben Franklin has developed. I'd say about 18 months ago, we launched Go Philly. What we found is, as these companies move through our process and our portfolio, they're bumping their heads up against that $1 million cap that we have. And when that happens, as they become successful, when that happens, they need more money. They want to raise a Series A, Series B. So they start looking outside of Ben Franklin, outside of the city, and sometimes end up moving out of the region and the state. They can go to New York, they go to Silicon Valley. And we were looking for how can we keep them here? We want to keep the jobs here, keep the talent here. So we raised the Global Opportunity Philadelphia Fund, which is about a $20 million fund. Now this is a fund that's run by Ben Franklin. So this is a for-profit venture fund. We raised $20 million, and now we're able to invest an additional $1 to $3 million into those companies that are rising to the top through our portfolio, and like I said, hitting that $1 million limit. A few success stories we have, one from each sector. We have this one's on the health sector. Leah Diagnostics developed a flushable biodegradable pregnancy test. They came to us really with a concept, and the reason that this company is up here on our success story is because they took advantage of just about every program that Ben Franklin offered, starting with FabNet, and finally were able to finalize a product design, get FDA approval, and right now they're in looking at manufacturing and how they're going to scale this thing up for manufacturing. You can see we put 600,000 into this company, and they grew from 2 to 10 employees in the time that we worked with them. Community Energy is a large company now that does carbon-free energy projects, wind and storage, solar. This company, we put 800,000 into this company. They grew from 35 to 43 employees, but more importantly, you can see their revenue growth, 37% year over year, which really has led them to be a large enough player that they were able to land this contract with Amazon Web Services. And then there's Instamed, which is an IT company. Well, it's a digital health company. And while we only invested $250,000 in this company, they started out with a very small team and now have grown into a big company to the point where they were purchased in May of 2019 for $500 million. So that's a success story we like to talk about. Not typical, but it's a good one. So that's all I had to talk about today. I'm ready to take any questions. This is the business development team right here. Like I said, I do physical sciences projects, investments. We also have John Beshin, who works with IT companies, and Sri, who does the health and digital health companies. And then Kate is the one who kind of keeps us all organized and is the first point of contact when it comes to people making web inquiries, phone inquiries, whatever, trying to partner up with Ben Franklin. So thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
So if you'd like, you can either pose your question orally or you can type it into chat and we'll read the question on your behalf. So the floor is open now.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Joel.
So I guess I do a lot of startup work with NYSERDA, which is the New York State Green Energy Authority. And the issue that I sometimes have is I see a lot of basically young kids getting into the startup area, people who just got their PhD or people who just got their bachelor's degree, and they form their companies, but don't have any business experience. And I'm wondering whether we're setting a trap for these kids in that instead of going out into the business world and getting some grounding in basic business, You're going right from the classroom to the entrepreneur route. And I'm just wondering whether we're setting them for failure by having them start too early.
So I would say, I wouldn't say we're setting them up for failure. We have to set their expectations. I would say, in my experience, when I talked about the tech transfer offices and the technologies coming through the universities, and what I find with those people, it's the same thing, right? They don't have the business experience. They're very interested in the technology. They don't even know what they don't know. So they think that, well, we're 95% of the way there on developing this technology. If we can just get this other 5%, that we're going to be, everybody's going to buy this. And that's definitely not the case. There's a whole lot more to it. And so, Joel, to your question, I encourage these people to come and talk to us at a very early stage. That's what we do in business development, and we're gonna meet with them, understand what it is that they're trying to do, and then give them here's what you're gonna have to need. Here's what you're gonna have to do to make yourself ready for investment, make yourself approachable by investors. And sometimes, a lot of times, they had no idea. And the other thing is, when we talk about our Mentor Connect program, that Mentor Connect program, one of the criteria to be a mentor is that you have to have done it. You have to have been an entrepreneur. And these are typically more seasoned people. So, if this technology looks really great and this entrepreneur or inventor lacks business experience, we may take this person under our wing, introduce them to mentors, and try to get them in shape for an investment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mark, Peter Bernstein speaking. This is something that'll be earlier than what you're doing, but are you aware if Pennsylvania has anything for the stage prior to company formation? I'm involved with several groups, one in Ohio that it does mostly US, but now is expanded to the UK, where in the drug discovery phase, they're trying to help academic groups get to the point from having an idea to forming that company, and then doing and I know that this is now been duplicated in some specific states. And I'm wondering if there's anything that Pennsylvania does that's related to that.
So it's not a Pennsylvania program, but it's a national program, the SBDCs. I'm not just saying that because Carl Kraus is on the call, but I will say that when I do find these companies that are too early for us, in addition to trying to give them a little bit of a roadmap, I will always, provided they have some credibility, I will always introduce them to the SBDC. Carl's with the Temple SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, but there are SBDCs across the country. There's a whole network of SBDCs where companies can get this kind of earlier stage assistance.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just jump in real quick, Mark. The other program that I find is very useful for these kind of companies, especially ones, technologies that are coming out of universities or being developed from an academic stream, is the NSF's I-Core program, because that forces some customer discovery and things like that, which typically is where these companies or these fledgling companies can run into some issues with respect to what's their market, who's their customer, that kind of thing. So that often helps as well.
Actually, that triggered another thought, another thing that I recommend for companies when they're too early for investment, but they have some pretty interesting technology, is to look into SBIR, because applying for that SBIR grant, to Carl's point, is going to make them think a little bit more outside of their technology box to think about this thing as a business.
What are some of the examples of what a scientist has to learn in business in order to make a business viable or ready for an investment?
So when you think about someone who's developing a technology, and I'll just use battery technology as an example because it's easy. Everybody's working on that, but different chemistry, different configurations. But again, these are technologists, these are scientists, they're technologists, and they know what they need to do to make this thing work, to get it to where they think it needs to be viable. Now, first of all, if you're developing new battery technology and you get 50% of the way there, that may be good enough from a commercial standpoint. You just use two of them instead of the one that you thought you would have to use, and you've got something, provided the economics all fall into place. But then the second thing is, how are you going to scale this thing? Who's going to make it? And can it be made? Sometimes the technology is so, still on a bench scale that you don't even know that you could scale this thing up. So they have to think about manufacturing and how will you make it? How will you scale it up? Who can do that for you? Are you going to manufacture it yourself? And then the next thing is the customer side, distribution. How are you going to get it out to market? You can't just put it on, if you're developing new battery technology, you can't just put it on social media and expect to find the right customer for that. You need to find a large battery manufacturer or a battery competitor. All of these kind of questions. There's so many. And then I'm thinking on the supply chain side, if you're using some exotic chemical that's going to cost a lot of money, that's not good. What else can you use that's going to be cheaper and change the value proposition of this invention? So there's just a lot of things that a technologist gets very focused on achieving, certain objectives in the development of the technology and doesn't think about the business, the commercial application.
So a lot of these are really practicality, in one word, it's practicality.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Can you just describe, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please, Brian. Go ahead.
Can you describe a little bit more about the portfolio in your physical scientists group? The way you kind of described it, you talked about digital and digital health and so forth, and kind of said physical science is everything else. And that's kind of where my background is, and so I wanted to know a little bit more detail about that. And as a little of a side, in a prior life, Certainteed was a customer long ago, and so there may be some overlap there. But again, I would just like to know a little bit more about the physical science side and some of the businesses that you've worked with, and what sort of technologies that you're involved with.
Yeah, well, so I mentioned how diverse it is, and it tends, we see a slew of IT companies coming in because they're not very capital intensive, right? A couple of students, a couple of grad students with laptops, and you got a company. Then there's health because of where we are here in Philadelphia. There's a lot of activity in the health sector. So that leaves everything else that's not IT or health. And that's where physical sciences is. I happen to do the investments for physical sciences. So it's all over the place. I can give you some examples of companies. I threw out some of the low tech companies that we were able to invest in, such as commercial fishing nets and baseball bats. But, more recently, there's a company, Deep Wave Digital, that we invested in that actually is using AI to pull out significant signals from the entire spectrum of radio frequencies. So, and not only that, and then to take those signals and interpret them. So super high tech. There are companies that are developing, energy storage technologies, batteries, large format batteries. I've got several robotics companies, drones, robotics, AI companies. So AI in itself would be IT, but if there's a hardware component to it, which generally there is, that will be in our physical sciences sector. So people are developing autonomous drones and robots. They're in there. I have a company tomorrow. We have a pitch session tomorrow. It's called DreamView, and they're developing a 360-degree vision system for robotics and drones. So, and then I can go, we talk certainty. I can go low tech again. There's a company that's developing a kind of a proprietary insulation for attic hatches. So it's the physical science portfolio is the most diverse, and actually I enjoy that. I see a lot of different things, and it's very interesting.
Thanks.
So, Mark, I actually work directly in sustainable chemicals. And I was would like to ask you sort of a perspective question across many industry segments. You see any large industry segments where you think consumer population at large might be beginning to so-called pay up a little bit for sustainability things in society, either decreasing greenhouse gases or reducing plastic in the environment, something like that? Do you see anything where industries might be able to charge consumers a little bit more over the incumbent technology for this cause? Just curious what you think.
Well, I can tell you that was something that we worked on a lot when I was at CertainTeed. And because of the nature of building products, it was very difficult to get an extra penny for any sustainability.
Right.
I will say, looking at what's happening, that I think there's more of an appetite for that right now. I think that these days people are becoming more earth conscious. I can't tell you that there's any one industry channel that I see. I mean, I guess I have seen several companies that are working on biodegradable plastics, and it seems that the price difference is not that great that they're able to kind of upsell that to a limited market. But I really don't have a definitive answer that yes, this is the place where I see an opportunity.
Other questions from the audience? Could you explain a little bit more about your GO program, your Global Opportunities Program? So you're saying that's a private fund?
Yeah, well, I explained where the need came from, and we actually did go out and raise $20 million. So yes, we had to attract investors. They had to write checks. The anchor investor there is a company called EPOM, which is a large software company out of Belarus, which also has a US headquarters locally. So they wrote a $5 million check. And then we got several other companies in the area to write several $1 million checks. But we had some other investors that wrote, the smallest amount we would accept is 100,000, and we have some high net worth individuals who wrote us some checks for that fund as well. And It's a pretty interesting concept. The only companies that are eligible for that investment are Ben Franklin companies. So we have a track record with these companies. They're not coming in cold. We have a track record. We've worked with them generally for 3 to maybe some cases 10 years, because remember, they're able to continue to come back until they hit that $1 million cap. So we know these companies, and I would say that this particular fund, while nothing is low risk, it's less risky than jumping into another VC fund.
Interesting. Are there any other questions for Mark?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. So I know you make the investment. I want to know what kind of return you're expecting, or how much return you're expecting from the.
We expect as much as possible.
Of course.
So here's the thing with our returns. We, as I said, the state provides money for investment. They get a return based on the jobs we create and the revenue that we create through the companies we invest in, not the returns. So they're getting $3. They're getting 3.9x on every dollar, right? That's their return. We put the money out there, and we have to invest well, because that's what pays our bills. Those returns that come back to us keeps the lights on for us and allows us to keep doing what we're doing. So, I mean, what are we looking for? Because we have a lot of limitations, right? We have the biggest one is a geographical limitation. We can only operate in this small region. So we are accepting of lower returns than your typical VC. However, we still need to maximize our returns, because if we don't do a good job and get returns, we'll be out of business.
Okay, so the returns to the state actually include those salaries and what the pension you paid.
So the returns to the state really have nothing to do. The returns to the state come from the tax, so the jobs we create, the increase in revenue that happens as a result of us working with businesses. They're paying, the people who get jobs are paying taxes to the state. The businesses are paying taxes to the state. That's how the state gets its returns. When we write a $200,000 check for an investment, we put it out there. By the way, I failed to mention, we offer a 5-year convertible note. So some investments remain as debt. Some investments will convert at some point along the line to equity. Depends on a lot of things. But anyway, we write our $200,000 check. It's our intention to receive every bit of that $200,000 back, with interest if it remains debt, or with a return if we have an equity position, the company exits.
Okay, so you mentioned about the business. So for example, they were initially at Pennsylvania, and then later on moved out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, if a company is, so that we require the company to stay here for 5 years. If they move out in 2 years, they have to pay us back. It's just that simple.
Okay.
And the reason, again, it's state money. The state of Pennsylvania wants the money, their state money, to be here in Pennsylvania.
All right, I see. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Well, if not, I'll turn it over to Mike again.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out. Our next meeting will be February 10th, 2021. And so check our website, and thanks for everybody for coming out. It's a great talk, Mark. Thank you very much.